I'm DrakeSchaff, and this is my art and philosophy project. So, one of his last books, Oh, the Places You Go, he has a quote: "You have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes, you can steer yourself in any direction you choose, and oh, the places you'll go." It was his final quote in one of his stories, and I thought it was really inspiring how committed he was to just having fun and being creative and being nonsensical about everything. And it really taught me how to not be so serious about everything I do. I think the most important aspect you should take away from anything is that you should always try to have fun doing it. So, I got a lot out of this book. I got a lot out of this project. And so, did you ever really know who he was, though? So Theodore Geisel, he was the man behind, The Cat in the Hat, and he was pretty secretive. He was very fun and whimsical in nature, and he was great at making just fun stories that didn't even have a meaning to them. And there was a lot about him that people didn't really know. He had a lot of secret work that he just didn't reveal to the public, and so there was this very whimsical, fun side of him, but then there was the stuff he kept private. And anyways, I have the book, but don't have it here. So, anyways, in the book, you see a lot of really crazy features. It's like if you thought his regular work was crazy, it really gets good in the work that he didn't share with the public. And that's what was really inspiring me with this project. I found his darker, more expressive work to be very intriguing. And looking at his art for 4 weeks now, it has become painfully clear that he practically has his own architectural philosophy. But before I get into that, let's start with how he relates to other architectural philosophies. So, minimalism is probably the closest one. He has this really unique way of making these very intricate, large structures that have a very minimalist feel. I think a big part of that comes from he uses very specific materials on all of his structures. There's not a variation, but I think the more interesting side of it is that he creates these almost organic and natural feeling structures that it almost makes this sense of scale feel natural, like it should be like that. Something I wouldn't typically think of when I look at minimalist architecture. Deconstructivism was another strong one. He really strays away from symmetry and traditional harmony. Having his features, they have harmony, but not in the typical sense. And a lot of non-rectilinear forms, so he has very round, curvy shapes to a lot of his structures. And Russian constructivism, probably the least related one. It's so focused on geometric forms having real direct purpose to them. And I just felt that there was a lot of times no direct purpose, no geometric form, or sharp forms. And the only real thing I could really relate to with Dr. Seuss was the lack of decorative pieces on the exteriors. They were very cut and dried to the point. But his architectural style, his philosophy It was very whimsical and imaginative. It was surreal, and it had vivid colors, bold lines, and exaggerated cartoony features, and these fantastical landscapes. He incorporated a lot of oddly shaped arcs in his features, and a lot of staircases that are seemingly endless and looping throughout all of his structures. He loves to have wildly sloped roofs and multiple offset levels, looking as if they were on the verge of falling over. So, looking into the principles of it, he has a lot of hierarchy in his work. He typically, had pieces that almost like led your eyes to them. Almost all of his art has some kind of focal point that you want to focus in on, or there's structures that are going to lead your eyes to it. Going straight into axis, there's typically windy paths or rolling hills that lead your eyes to like a scenery that they're going to follow into within the narrative. So he utilizes a lot of like axis and hierarchy to kind of lead you through his narratives, whether it was in a storybook or his secret art. Mediation, kind of the way land and the structures would flow together. He really loved bending the land and his features to his will. So you can see in a lot of his work, like half of the actual, like you would think the structure is actually just like the land that has been like almost molded into the building itself. And they complement each other really well. It's the way he creates this sense of like, they're both supposed to be together. They wouldn't make sense without each other. It was really intriguing to me. He uses a lot of cluster and transitions. So he has a lot of features that are repeating and together in a nonsensical kind of way. Like there's not really a rhythm to them or a rhyme or reason to them necessarily. And they're often transitioning between kind of slightly different structures. And then finally, there's repetition and rhythm. One fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish. He loves repeating and he loves repetition. It's everywhere in all of his work. And positive and negative spaces, and specifically subtraction. A lot of his structures look like there was stuff taken away from it after the fact. Kind of almost like the way all of the arches are made. It's like there was structure there and then it was pulled away, and you can see more of the interior because of this. So you're seeing like these positives and then the negatives of the interior.
So take us through your project.
Yes. Creating my model was a pretty big challenge because he has so many defining features that are just very, like, they stand out a lot. And it was finding a good mix of, interpreting all of this and creating a unique interpretation of his work without straight up imitating it. And I chose to do this by making a castle and showing really just how massive his structures were. And then like the more defining features like the stairs or the arches that he has in all of his structures, I incorporated that, like the staircase going in. I tried to use the staircase to kind of bring together the axis and hierarchy of it all, having it lead you into the building without having staircases everywhere. That is more typical of his models, as well as the arches. Instead of just making arches everywhere, I chose to create more organic, flowy shapes that were just following the patterns of the structure itself. So a lot of the times there's like staircases that are going up, and I have features cut out to flow with the staircase, or there's floors that'll be like cut straight through to show the interior perspectives. So I tried to stray away from the more typical sense of things. And I made it out of clay because I was really wanting to capture his organic, free-flowing kind of nature. And I feel like a lot of his work takes almost direct inspiration to how it would be with clay. He loves clay models, as you can see in the picture down there. A lot of his works were made in clay beforehand. So it only made sense to me that I would try and attempt to make this model out of clay. Complications did arise, there's cracks, but I almost feel like it wouldn't be right without the cracks. You know, he has this sense of like imperfection that he carries with all of his work. And I just feel it helps emphasize that fact in a sense. So, going into my model.
Can you talk to us about your plans and sections too?
Yeah, so going into my model, I have 4 floors. The first floor is kind of like a basement. It is integrated with the ground, and you can walk inside and go down the stairs, and there's the basement, and the dark space is in the second room, and then there's a feature leading into the second, or this open area where I pictured there'd be green space. I feel he was a very in touch with nature kind of person, and I thought it only made sense that there were a lot of openings. So there's a opening in the center for some green space, and then an opening in the back where you can exit. And then going on to the second floor is where the main entrance is, where you would come in if you were coming up through the stairs, walking through the mountains. And there's the entrance and the staircase coming up from the first floor. And so as you're moving up, we continue to go on. We getting to the third floor. I think that's the final floor. This is the third floor, sorry. And you're kind of getting more up to the top. So the top floors, I really wanted to have more open spaces, and I really had this kind of idea that it's like the first 2 floors would be like where he lived and everything, and then as you got further up, that was his creative space, and that's where he like did most of his lounging or working. It's like out in the environments, taking inspiration from his surroundings, and I really tried to incorporate a lot more open gaps to have light coming through. And finally, the 4th floor, I chose to offset the side structure on the building because a lot of his works don't typically have, you know, normal flows. They don't just go up one floor at a time. So I thought it would only be right to have some weirdly shaped floors that would kind of like be kind of sporadic at where they were placed. So there's, on the side, there's really 2 floors that are just extended. So
Great. I get it.